DreAllDay.com.
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all that, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, we're going to talk about what you say to you. This is about why the conversation that you have with yourself is the most important conversation that there is. Now, if you have been listening to my stuff or reading my stuff or watching for any amount of time, you have definitely heard me touch on this before from multiple different angles, but I want to make sure we give a whole masterclass just to this topic so that you understand the importance of this. So make sure that you are taking notes on what I'm saying here today, writing down the most relevant things, and you can send me a text and tell me what's the most relevant thing you got from this. If it's more than one, you send me more than one text. My number, 305-384-6894. Again, 305-384-6894. And I will step on any of my points if I go into any more here in the introduction. So let's just get right into it. The topic, once again, is what you say to you, your self-conversation. Point number one, hearing and reading things that come from other people will only take you so far in your personal development journey when it comes to developing your self-image, when it comes to building yourself up or tearing yourself down. All right, already, whether you're going in a positive direction or a negative direction, is only so much that other people are going to really, push you up or down that hill. It ain't really about what other people are saying or about what other people are doing. It only goes so far what I can say to you, or what your best friends say to you, or what some haters in the comment section have to say about you, or some person who's just trying to pull you down and they want you to be a loser. There's only so much that they can do, that they can actually, get towards achieving that outcome. Anything that you hear from me or from anyone else is not really going to hit you until or unless you take it and you say it to yourself. And again, let me be clear, this could be something that's positive or it could be something that's negative. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's building you up and making you feel good, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's negative and trying to, or at least attempting to, make you feel or look bad. Because there has to be some Velcro in there. Y'all know how Velcro works, right? You need two pieces. You need the piece that receives it and the piece that comes and sticks on it. And unless you have both pieces, then nothing that another person sends your direction is going to stick with you. If you don't believe it, if you don't take it in and repeat it to yourself, it's not really going to matter. If someone's trying to tell you that you're better than you actually are and that you can really perform at a higher level than you've been performing, if you don't believe it, if there's no part of you that buys into it, then you're not going to perform at a higher level, even though you heard what the person said. And if someone says something negative to you and tells you that you're terrible, you're trash, you're garbage, you don't even deserve to be in halfway towards the position that you're in right now, if you don't buy into it, if you don't accept what that person says, then it won't really affect you. So what you say to you matters a ton more than what anybody else is going to say. You must have something within you that's going to allow those words or those words to stick, to allow that energy to stick and actually stay with you. So I mean this literally. You have to take things, you have to say them to yourself. When I say literally, say it to yourself. Take those words and actually speak them out loud to you. What we call this is an actual thing. It's called auto-suggestion. Some people just call it self-talk, self-conversation. Now, the question that you may be wondering, if you never really considered this or if it's your first time hearing about something like this, I wrote a whole book on it. It's called The Mental Workbook. And I understand maybe you didn't know about The Mental Workbook, but now you know. You can get that at workonyourgame.com. Your question that you may be wondering, or maybe you're not, but I'm going to plant it in your mind anyway, is does it matter much between hearing and reading something versus saying it and writing it to yourself? And the answer is absolutely yes. In other words, one of the reasons that I don't say it every episode of this show, but I probably should say it more often. I said it here today, that what you listen to on this show, even if it's really, you believe is really valuable to you, you think it's really empowering and uplifting and inspirational and it's helping you to develop and it's helping you get better. And I'm sure if you listen to enough of this show, there are plenty of things that I've said in the past that you remember then you may have certain episodes that you bookmarked and said, yeah, I'm going to come back to that episode, or certain phrases or passages that I've spoken that have really stuck with you and you're really keeping them with you. Understand something. What I say, meaning you heard it, or what I write, meaning that you read it, will not have nearly the impact on you that those exact same words will have if you say it and you write it down. It's one thing when another person, doesn't matter who the person is. It could be me, it could be your mom and dad, it could be one of your kids, your coworker, one of your friends, some random person that you don't even know who they are. What someone else is offering you versus what you offer you has about a 10%, 90% impact ratio. We just divide the impact up into by 100%. We just divide it up between what other people are sharing and what you say to you. It's about 10% to 90%, other people and you. So the most that I or any author or any podcast or any motivational speaker could give you to help you feel however you want to feel about yourself is about 10%. They can only take you about 10% of the way. You got to do the other 90. So if any of you ever been in a situation, or if you ever known someone who says, listen, I feel like I'm listening to the shows, I'm watching the YouTube videos, I'm reading the books, I'm going to the conferences, I'm showing up at all the events, I'm hanging around the mentors, and they're saying all these positive, empowering, inspiring things, yet I still don't really feel like I'm getting to another level. I still don't really feel like I'm getting better the way that I want to get better. I just told you why, if you read between the lines, but I'm going to spell it out for you explicitly. The reason why is what other people are saying to you can only fulfill about 10% of what you're going to need to really start seeing yourself in the mirror the way you want to see yourself in the mirror. The other 90% has to be done by you, meaning literally you take the words that another person said that were inspiring or empowering to you, and then you had to say those words to yourself. And yes, I do literally mean say them to yourself. Look in the mirror and speak to yourself. Talk to yourself. Write them down and read them to yourself. We call this auto-suggestion or self-conversation. And this is, again, my book, The Mental Workbook. That is a 500-page book. It's all about this. And it is a workbook. So it's not just 500 pages of you reading. That's a lot of reading. And this is a bigger format book. I think it's an 8x10 print that we did on that book. That book will help you lay out your entire auto-suggestion, meaning all the things that you need to say to yourself on a day-to-day basis is laid out in that book. Again, it's called The Mental Workbook. You can get it by going to workonyourgame.com. We got all of our books listed right there on that page. So does it matter between hearing and reading something and actually saying it, writing it to yourself? Absolutely it does. This is why I tell you when I talk about my book, The Mirror of Motivation, which you can get for free at mirrorofmotivation.com. What do I tell you about that book? I tell you that that book is going to help you ask and answer the question, who do I need to be? Notice two things you're going to do with it. Ask the question and you're going to answer the question. You got to have this conversation with yourself. I can't tell you who you need to be as a person. Even if you told me every detail of your life, everywhere you've been in the past, your whole life story, and everywhere you want to go in the future, there's only so much that I can tell you about who you need to be. You got to snatch that torch and you got to decide who you need to be. And then you got to tell yourself, because what you're saying, that travels through the bones. Like in my book, Work on Your Game, I talked about this sound that travels through the bones versus sound that travels through the air. Sound that travels through the air is what somebody else says. And like what you're hearing from me right now is traveling through sound waves. The air is conducting it. The sound is conducted through the air and then it comes to your ears. But sound that you say yourself travels through your bones and it goes straight into your skull. Same place that my words come from, but through the air and through the bones sound completely different. And what comes through the bones will have much more of an impact on your life than what comes through the air. Again, I don't care who says something that comes through the air. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is what you say to you. Number 2, what you say to yourself internally. We call that thinking. Everybody's heard of that before, right? All thinking is just a back and forth Q&A session that you're having with yourself on an ongoing basis. All of our thoughts, the things that we think, lead to the things that we say. Thoughts lead to words, words lead to actions, actions lead to habits, and habits lead to character. So if we just work backwards on this, if you want to make a wholesale change in your life, you want to change your character, you want to change your habits, you want to change your reputation, you want to change how people feel about you, you want to change how people see you, you want to change your perception and your position in the marketplace, in the game, in the field, whatever it is that you're doing. If we just work backwards, it's very simple. It starts with a change in how you think. And if we want to go even a step backwards from that, the way that you think is influenced by the things that you are taking in. What are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you watching? Who are you hanging out with? What are they doing? What actions are you seeing people do? And what kind of energies are you engaging with? When you change those, your inputs, then your thoughts are going to change, and then it leads to a change eventually in your outputs. This is a very simple process. It may not necessarily be easy depending on what habits you already have in place. It may be very easy if you already have these habits in place. You don't even think about it. You're already taking these things in. I would suggest you read a book called As a Man Thinketh. It's written by James Allen, and I'm not sure this book might even be out of print, which means out of print doesn't mean that you can't find the book. Out of print means you can go probably download it on the internet, a PDF or something. Don't even have to pay for the book. Those of you shortcutters, freeloaders. But you can also buy this book. There are plenty of them on audio books. You can probably find somebody probably did an audio version on YouTube. You can get the book on Amazon, whatever. But it's called As a Man Thinketh, written by James Allen. It's a very short book. Everyone who's listening to my voice right now should read this book, and you should keep it handy so you can read it over and over again. As I said, your thoughts are the fertile ground upon which your life is built. It's basically the fertile ground where you plant the seeds of whatever life you want to live, or the way that you think. Or so you want to be a business person, you got to have some thoughts that are going into your mind. They're going to put you in the mentality of being a business person, not just the actions of being a business person. What do I tell you all the time? I wrote about this in my book, Work on Your Game. I talk about it in the Mirror Motivation. It is be, do, and have. I talk about that damn near in every book. I talk about it in Work on Your Game, Mirror Motivation. I talk about it in the Mental Workbook. I talk about it in the Super You, in the 100 Mental Game Best Practices. Almost every book that I write, rather. And my next book that is coming out, I'm going to talk about it again. And actually, both books that are coming out this year, I'm going to talk about the be, do, have principle because it matters so much. A lot of times in life when we want to achieve something, the first thing that we think about, and often the only thing that we think about, is what do I need to do? What actions do I need to take? Which may make sense to some of you because, listen, you listen to a show called Work on Your Game. That sounds like an action phrase, right? Work on your game. Go do something. It's a directive. But it's who you are being as a person that leads to the actions that you do. You want to change what you're doing, you got to change who you're being as a person. When your thoughts change and your vision of yourself changes, the actions will automatically follow. The change in actions will automatically follow. So your thoughts are the fertile ground where you plant the seeds for the person that you're going to become. It's the foundation basically for the house that you're constructing. So any of you who follows my Instagram stories, you see me with the one day at a time, all the time, showing you the buildings being built. All right, if those buildings have a weak foundation, it doesn't matter how pretty the building is because eventually that building is going to fall apart. Nobody's going to be able to use it and it'll get condemned, and whoever built that building will basically be out of work because they won't be able to work in the industry ever again. Their whole reputation will be destroyed. The most beautiful house in the world, when built on a shaky foundation, in other words, a shaky foundation of thoughts. Now, you can have beautiful things going on in your life, but if you think in a negative way, then something's going to fall apart. A lot of things are going to fall apart. And usually, eventually, everything's going to fall apart to the point that nobody can live in that house anymore. The most beautiful flowers planted on bad soil will soon die. So it is your thoughts, which are things that we can't see. The only person who can control them and really knows what's going on in your mind is you. You can't read another person's thoughts. The thoughts have the most impact on the stuff that people eventually do see. So how people see you when you walk outside of your house. Like right now, as I'm recording, this is actually happening. I'm facing the window while I'm recording. And there's a guy who just came out on his balcony. And he was sitting there for a minute, and right when he stood up, he was sitting down on his balcony. He stood up to go back inside of his place, and he just spit over the balcony. So whoever is down on the ground, hopefully there was nobody down on the ground before he spit. He didn't look, so I don't think he was aiming at anybody, but he just spit right over the balcony before he went right back inside his house. I don't know who that guy is. I know he doesn't live there because I've never seen him before. But anyway, the whole point is this. The stuff that we can see, I don't know this dude the first time I ever seen him, and that's one of the first actions that I seen this guy take. All right, what kind of thoughts do you think are going through his head? All right, how much personal development you think that guy's taking in? Right, just something for you to marinate on as we move on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is what you say to yourself. Number 3, tell yourself what you would want your biggest fan or your staunchest supporter to tell you. Someone who's really a big fan of yours, someone who really loves your stuff and wants you to just keep doing what you're doing because you are just giving them great stuff and they want you to be, the best you could possibly be. What would they say to you? What would they say to you on a day-to-day basis to just let you know how much game you're putting into the world and how much what you're offering is really helping other people. Tell yourself the same thing that person would say to you. Tell yourself what one of your biggest supporters would say to you. Tell yourself what one of your supporters would say about you if someone was trying to attack you and tear you down and say that you weren't really that good. What would they say? I don't want you to be your own biggest critic. All right, I told you back in episode number 1785 why you do not need to be your own worst critic. I know it's a common phrase and cliche that a lot of people say, well, I'm my own worst critic. I'm harder on myself than anybody else ever would be on me. There are times to use that and there are ways to use it strategically. But what I've found in my experience, especially in people who have challenges anywhere inside of their mental game, is that people take this way too far and they start beating themselves up more than they're being a critic. A critic will just tell you objectively, all right, you need to fix this part, and this part over here. That's what a critic does. It's like what a coach does or a mentor would do. But when we are being our own critics, we don't do that, do we? We take it way further than that. We make it personal because we're talking to ourselves, so it usually is personal. We know our own weak spots, so we dwell on those weaknesses. And because our brains are like it's like a perfect personal assistant that never needs a day off and never needs even a minute off, as soon as we start saying negative things about ourselves and thinking negative thoughts about ourselves, what does our brain do? Our brain recognizes that pattern, those negative things, and what does it do? It goes and pulls up out of the files, out of the vault of our memories, all the negative things that we've ever thought or said about ourselves, or all the negative things we ever experienced in our lives. And because we know about everything, it's no way we can keep it objective when we're talking about ourselves. So this is why you don't want to be your own worst critic. All right, what you want to be is your own biggest fan. Be your number one fan instead of being your biggest critic. If you need a critic, go hire a coach, go join a mastermind group, go get an accountability partner, let them be your critic. The reason why, again, because another person will be objective when they criticize you. You are incapable of being objective in criticizing yourself because you know too much. All right, go to someone who knows a little bit less and they can just look at your actions on the surface and talk objectively about what they're seeing. So tell yourself what you want your biggest fan to tell you. The funny thing with this is many people subconsciously push back on this very point that I'm giving you, is the being your biggest fans. People will say, well, Dre, I don't want to be unrealistic about myself. I don't want to talk myself up too much and then bring my confidence up too high or talk myself up as if I'm better than I actually am. I already told you that too much confidence is not your biggest problem. Too much confidence will never be your problem. And if you haven't seen my TED Talk on that, go to toomuchconfidence.com. You can see my 2 TED Talks where I talk about confidence. The rest of the world, understand this, outside of you, the rest of the world will supply you plenty of quote unquote reality, all right, to bring you back down to earth. So if you're concerned about not having enough reality in your life, okay, the rest of the world will give you plenty of it. All right, so do not worry. Trust me, the rest of the world will always give you more of it if that's what you really need. I told you in episode number 1062 that reality is negotiable, and also in episode 715 that reality is killing you. And both times I'm using reality in quotation marks because often when we say reality, we don't mean just objective what is. What we usually mean is let's bring ourselves down, let's take whatever ambitions we have and let's just lower them down by about 50%. That's what most people are talking about when they say reality. That is not reality. So anyway, listen to those episodes and go check out my TED Talk on it at toomuchconfidence.com. So don't worry about not having enough reality in your life. The rest of the world will give you plenty of it as soon as you step outside your house. You supply the good stuff. Okay? Since the rest of the world is being quote unquote realistic, you supply all the good stuff because nobody else is going to give it to you. Life will supply you the shit. You supply the good stuff. All right? Is that a fair enough deal? See episode number 1663 where I talked about you choosing your favorite flavor of shit sandwich, because in life you're gonna have to eat a shit sandwich one way or another. You might as well not serve it to yourself because life will give it to you. All that being said, let's recap today's class, which is what you say to you. This is about your self conversation and it being the most important conversation you will ever have. Point number 1, hearing and reading other people only goes so far. Anything you hear from anyone else other than you doesn't really hit you until you take it and say it to yourself. 90% of the impact of things that are said to you come from you, through the bones, not from other people, and through the air. Point number 2, what you say to yourself internally, we call that thinking. Your thoughts lead to words, words to actions, actions to habits, habits to character. So to work backwards, a wholesale change in your life starts with a change in how you think. And changing how you think starts with taking a step back from there, the things that you are taking in. Make sure you read As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. If you've already read it, read it again. Point number 3, tell yourself what you would want your biggest fan or your staunchest supporter to tell you. Many people push back on this because they don't want to push their confidence or self-esteem too high. Most of you are so far away from that being a problem, is laughable. The rest of the world will supply plenty of reality to bring you back down to earth. So don't worry about that. Life will supply you plenty of shit. You supply the good stuff. Fair enough? Send me a text. Tell me the best thing you got from today's episode. What's really resonating with you? What are you going to do different based on what you heard today, if anything? My number, 305-384-6894. 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.